We are now less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, and now that we've had plenty of time to do our mock drafts and scout prospects on YouTube, I wanted to give you 5 prospects who I think are perfect fits for what the Packers are looking for in this upcoming draft, where they have 4 selections in the top 60, so it should be an exciting one. Before we get too far ahead in this video, I did want to remind you and kind of just throw it out into the universe that I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to this YouTube channel here at Underage Packers. We're really just getting started on all the draft content we got planned, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. With that being said, let's hop right into this. So, like I said, 5 prospects that are perfect fits for the Packers. I chose the 5 strongest positions of need for the Packers in my opinion. So for me, that was wide receiver, offensive tackle, safety, outside linebacker, and defensive tackle. And I chose one player at each position that I think strongly fits what the Packers look for at that position and also kind of what they need specifically at that position. So let's head right into it, starting with wide receiver. And there's a lot of good choices, and the Packers also might say, you know, who cares about physical and what we typically view in a wide receiver, you know, physical, tall, lengthy guy. Let's just go out there and get a good player. You know, Chris Olave is certainly one of those, Christian Watson, George Pickens, Treylon Burks, so many guys that should be available to them at 22 or possibly in a trade-up that are just great athletes, great players that could turn into elite wide receivers. But I went with kind of an underrated sleeper option, I guess you could say. And he might be in that range between the Packers' 28th and 53rd overall pick, where they might have to trade down or up in order to get him. But I went with Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati, standing at 6'3", 208 pounds. And I really like this guy for the Packers, even though I just found out about him like last week. Once again, he is kind of a sleeper, but I think he is a perfect fit for the Packers, and that is mainly because of his ability in the run game. One thing that has been made clear over Matt LaFleur's first 3 years as the Packers head coach is that he wants his wide receivers to be able to block in the run game. You see that with Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Equanimeous St. Brown. And the 2 that I just mentioned there out of the 3, EQ and MVS, left in free agency. The Packers did go ahead and sign Sammy Watkins just this past week in free agency, and he certainly is a physical player that is willing to block, but the Packers are still going to want more. This is clearly Matt LaFleur's type and also the Packers' type. Even before Matt LaFleur got there, Brian Gutekunst and the Packers front office wanted their wide receivers to be tall and physical so that they would be able to play and survive until December, really, and play in those cold weather games. Alec Pierce certainly seems like that guy. That his run blocking stands out, and he reminds a lot of people of Packers great Jordy Nelson simply because of his ability to, you know, use the sidelines to its advantage, work on the sidelines. I think he would work best mainly as a deep threat on the outside, but he also does have the versatility to play slot wide receiver, so to me he has Packers receiver written all over him. Would not be surprised to see the Packers pick him up on day 2. Next, we have safety, which I think is kind of a unique need for the Packers because Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage are both on contract years. And there's also questions, really, if Darnell is the future at safety, you know, if he is going to develop into that elite player. He's still got this year to prove this. But ultimately, not only are those 2 on contract years, that factors into it, but also the Packers just need a third safety, which is kind of an underrated position in general. You look at Joe's Barry defense, which is a modernized version of the Vic Fangio defense, so really originating from Brandon Staley, and that year in LA for the Rams, Staley used a lot of disguises with his safeties, and that's what made his defense so special. And you really couldn't tell what the coverage was going to be because the safeties were moving up to the line of scrimmage all over the field, and it was difficult for the quarterback to read the coverage pre-snap. So it would be really nice to add a safety in there for that reason, for his versatility, and he can also play as a dime linebacker, which was a deep need for the Packers last year, as we saw Henry Black, Vernon Scott, both struggle in that position. So safety is undoubtedly a need, and that's why I went ahead and said that Daxton Hill from Michigan is another perfect fit for the Packers. He's only 21 years old, so you like to see that, a young prospect. He has a relative athletic score of 9.03, which, if you're not familiar with the relative athletic score, it is basically a formula, a calculation, if you will, that puts all the measurables, all the testing and skills of a player, how they performed on that. So 40-yard dash, vertical, broad jump, all of that information into a calculation, and then it spits out this number on a 0 to 10 scale. And the Packers have traditionally drafted players that are very high on that scale. If you look at back at Brian Gutekunst specifically, and all of his day 1 or day 2 picks, almost all of them have a relative athletic score somewhere greater than 7. That doesn't mean they're always going to choose a player with a high RAS and might completely shut down a player that's less athletic, but all across the board, they want their players to be athletic. Whether they know about the relative athletic score because it's kind of a niche, underground type thing, if you will, whether they know specifically about this calculation or not, they want their players to be athletic. Back to Daxton Hill. Like I said, 9.03 on the relative athletic score. We're in a 4.3840, which is pretty nice for a safety. You can really value that. Really shows that he could be a great dime backer to stop the run and also cover the deep passes over the middle from slot wide receivers and tight ends as well. So Daxton Hill be great for the Packers to put it into this need at safety, and also if Darnell Savage or Adrian Amos leaves, unfortunately, after the season, if either one of them does, you have this guy in the system for a year that you're able to plug in there with a year of experience already in him. Now for defensive tackle, where the Packers will certainly be looking for a sidekick, a running mate with Kenny Clark, if you will, and I went with Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia, 6'3", 304 pounds, massive man, who ran a 4.78 40-yard dash. That is insane. And that 40-yard dash is not deceiving at all. He is big and he's also athletic. So he simply just eats up, space in the run game. That's not a fat joke, but he eats up those blocks. And I think he also has an underrated ability, unexpected maybe, motor and pass rush. Can just chase after him and will power through blocks. He had 24 quarterback hits last season. The one downside that I think the Packers will kind of label as a red flag, and the rest of the league, though, is that he is 24 years old, unfortunately. So he's kind of like 3 years ahead of everybody else. But he doesn't have that experience yet. So by the time he gets to the position where the Packers feel he is fully developed, he'll probably be like 27 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about. But that maybe has him falling deeper down the first round and possibly even onto the early/mid second round. So we'll have to see with Devontae Wyatt. I think he can be one of those players like Christian Barmore last year, a defensive tackle from Alabama, who was expected to go somewhere in the mid-first round. But then, like I said, with Wyatt, he fell to the second round for unknown reasons to me. I don't know if he was older or not, but I just see Wyatt as possibly falling down farther than many people think. But either way, Wyatt, I think, would be a great pick for the Green Bay Packers. Now on to outside linebacker, where the Packers are actually pretty good off. They have two good starters in Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith, but outside of them, it gets really shaky really quick. They need outside linebacker depth now, and they also need somebody that can, be in training, be in development over these next few years as we see how the remainder of Preston Smith's extension plays out, if he does actually stay along for the whole 5 years of that extension, which would surprise me. But either way, that outside linebacker position is a need. So for my perfect fit for edge rusher, I have George Karlaftis out of Purdue, 6'4", 266 pounds. Look, I have no clue how he is 266 pounds. I'm really not sure. I'm going to show you a picture from his pro day. That's 266 pounds of pure strength. He is just insanely physical, very explosive off the line, and simply just an athletic beast. He is someone whose highlights are incredibly fun to watch. I mean, I would be terrorized of him if I was a quarterback facing him. Karlaftis might not fall to 22 or 28. He's one of those players, along with Wyatt, that the draft, the perception of where he will go in this draft is so completely different from whoever you ask. I would be surprised if Karlaftis fell out of the first round, but look, compared to all these other prospects, I've never seen a draft class, in my opinion, that has had players spread out across so many different projections. So I think this draft will be one of the most interesting drafts just to see where everybody goes in quite some time. Now, onto the final position, offensive tackle, where I have kind of another player that isn't at the top of his position, like Trevor Penning or Bernard Raymond, Charles Cross, those three guys. I went with Abraham Lucas out of Washington State, 6'6", 315 pounds. So 315 pounds is a lot, but at 6'6", he is lean and not really the size you'd want out of a right tackle. However, like I was talking about earlier with Daxton Hill and the Packers' obsession with high athletic guys, Lucas is certainly athletic. He impressed many at the combine with his athleticness and his fast testing speed. So that is something to watch. And I think he could be a solid day one starter. I think the common opinion on him is if he adds more weight, adds more strength to his legs, and is able to hold his own against some stronger, more physical pass rushers, then he can be a really solid player that can develop into something special. Probably a day two pick here in the second round. But I just think he'd be the perfect fit for the Packers because he has athletic, can play right guard, right tackle. Might be better for right guard just because of his size as of now, but we'll have to see how he projects. Might be somebody that can start on day one, but will get better year by year as he, grows as a better player and just grows his body. All right, that is all I have for you here today on the Underage Packers YouTube channel. I truly appreciate you watching, and I truly appreciate all of the draft experts that I can tell are already roasting me in the comments down below. So thank you for that. Thank you for the engagement. If you did enjoy this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on all the social medias, and I'll talk to you later. As always, go Pack Go.